Okay.
Let's start off with him.
Oops. This is a conversation between Epydemic2020, which me and him have been talking about morality for a while now, and we both kind of agree that there is objective morality, although he attributes it to a God, although I have yet to hear how he does that. And this is a conversation between him and Shawnerd, and I just wanted to go over some of these things, and I'm just going to kind of make this really quick because I've actually done this video twice now but screwed it up. So anyway, let's see what we have here.
Clarifying his position.
He latched onto this and said that, I believe the basis for morality is in desires, which is not true.
Okay, on this, me and Epydemic agree that that is true, that your morality is based off of your desires. Because you can either desire to be moral, you can desire to be immoral, you can desire to be good, you can desire to be bad. What you value, what you believe, and what you value is going to be the basis for what your so-called morality is. Now, as far as objective morality, or what I like to call correct morality, accurate morality, if you will, is going to be what is true morality. In other words, Ted Bundy, Hitler, a mother who said that God told me to do it, kills all her kids. They might think in their minds that they're being moral, but the rest of us look at that and we know that that is not moral, that is immoral. Killing people to begin with, and in most cultures, killing people, stealing from people, those are usually the two core things in any, culture's moral codes. For the most part. I'm not saying that everybody, but for the most part, and that's because for an individual to have any kind of positive in their life or any kind of security in their life or whatever, that they, as individuals, we don't want somebody to be able to kill. We don't want our society to be able to kill because then we might get killed. There is a selfish reason for that. It's a survival instinct. And it's a survival instinct that's not just based on me as an individual, but it's also in relationship to the people that I'm in a society with. They are the basis. Our morality as a society is the basis for our laws. So, and we can see that from early man till now that our morality has gotten better. We can look back at things that we used to think were moral and go, oh my God, why did, burning women because we suspected them of being witches. Oh my God, that was not moral. Well, how could we have thought that that was moral? Because we were basing our morality more at the time on our superstitions, our beliefs. The less we base what is right and what is good on what we believe, what God we believe, what doctrine we believe, what superstitions we believe, the more accurate our decisions are going to be as far as doing what is best or what's going to cause the most positive outcome for society. And I think that that's proven in our history, in the world's history, in culture. So you can compare even, okay, for example, you could compare America to, say, third world countries, or to say, well, I mean, like, say, Middle Eastern cultures. They have a lot of laws and things that are kind of more, their whole culture is wrapped up in what they believe, and their superstitions is what I would call them. And most of their laws and the things that they agree are okay or whatever, we think are totally immoral. Because of the fact that we know better. Because of the fact that, some people might disagree with them because, well, I'm a Christian and they're basing that on Muslim beliefs, and I don't, because I'm a Christian, I don't agree with the Muslim God and with all that, and that's why they're so screwed up. And no. It's wrong because it's wrong. It's no more wrong, and I think in my mind, than it is for people to make judgment calls based off of Christian religion. There's no difference. I mean, yeah, I think a lot more of what is objectively moral, maybe some of that, I guess I could agree, more of that comes from a Christian doctrine, as it were, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Even atheists go by that. That's a good idea. There are a lot of good ideas in the Bible, and maybe even in other religions. I don't know. But the point is that there is such a thing as objective morality, but it's a natural instinct. And I think I've already made that case with you. I haven't had you really argue it out of me yet. But I also have yet to hear you make the case that because we both agree that there's objective morality, that it equals God. And you kind of do this here in this video, and we'll talk about that when we get to it.
this kind of misrepresentation sort of skews the entire, like a large portion of the rest of his arguments. The word straw man comes to mind, but whether this was intentional or not is kind of in question, and more likely it was unintentional.
Thanks for the benefit of the doubt there. The reason I took desires to be your source of morality is because at 2 minutes and 55 seconds of your first video, you had mentioned that you were asked about your source of morality, and a couple seconds after that, you mentioned that you had a desire to benefit humanity, so I took that as your answer.
But I want to know what's so wrong with approaching situations and applying reason and logic to determine.
Okay, so anyways, you guys go through this whole thing, and, you know, I definitely, for the most part, agree with Epi. You get to this thing where you're talking about these premises: happiness for the society, happiness for the individual, misery for the society, misery for the individual. And, you know, you're kind of trying to make the point as far as the way people, whatever the path people choose to make those certain goals happen. And I think that's kind of irrelevant to the topic or to the debate. I don't think it matters one way or the other how somebody goes about doing whatever it is that they consider moral. That still doesn't say that there's not objective morality, number one. And number two, it's irrelevant to the discussion. Who cares how somebody goes about doing those things? That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing why does somebody, how do we, or how does an individual know the difference between right and wrong? And, you know, that's basically what we're discussing. And I'm basically saying that there's no God necessary, that it's a natural instinct. We all have the propensity as babies to you know, you prefer to look at a smiley face over a frowning face. You know, there's science that shows that we human beings as babies desire what is good. As we get older, we start to learn how to manipulate that a little bit. We start to, you know, you go through the terrible twos. You learn that, you know, maybe your mom and dad is giving you a positive reinforcement even though they might not know it. Maybe they're positively reinforcing you acting out or acting badly, so that you're going to continue to act badly because you're getting a desired response for that. It's not that when you're 2 years old you know that, well, you know, it's kind of immoral for me to steal this cookie from the cookie jar. You know, it's kind of a bad thing for me to steal. No, you're just, you know, whatever, you're surviving. You're doing what you need to do, what you think you want. You're trying to achieve your goals, your desires. But then as we get older, we start developing these beliefs. You know, do we believe in God? Do we not believe in God? And you get a lot more sophisticated with it, hopefully. And, you know, then we start kind of basing our moral compass, as it were, on those doctrines. But really, you had the moral compass prior to choosing said God. And Epi, I would ask you that. I would say, you know, how did you choose the Christian God? What did you base that choice off of? Didn't you have to, when you read the Bible, when you first started learning about Jesus and God and everything, didn't you have to decide for yourself at some point if this God was moral? And didn't you make that judgment? And what did you use to make that judgment with? You weren't born with the Bible in you. You weren't born with that knowledge. You weren't born with the idea of God and who he was. You might have had some kind of, you know, you might have imagined a God. You might have thought that you, and then of course it got to the point where you were taught a God by your parents or whatever, but you still at some point or another, and I would like to think this, had to decide if this God was moral or not. And you have that compass in you. You didn't need the God in order to make that decision. And even if you haven't done that, you know, okay, looking at other religions, why are other religions immoral and your God is moral? What are you using to make that decision with? You're using your brain. You're using your logic. You're deciding based off of what you think is a logical answer to that, well, my God is moral or more moral than these other religions because, you know, there has to be reasons why you think your God is moral. What are you basing that off of? And what I find interesting is that even within the Christian religion, you know, I can show you how your God is immoral based on what we as mankind and humanity do not consider moral. It's not moral to take your child, and because your child doesn't believe you or doesn't believe in something you say or doesn't believe you are their parent. Say your kid says, well, I don't believe you're my mommy. I think I was adopted. Are we going to find it moral if we throw that child in the basement, catch it on fire for eternity? That's not moral. It's not even moral by your God's standards to do that. Yet this is what your God does. There are inconsistencies in what the doctrine that you believe in holds up as morality. I mean, your God says, thou shalt not kill, but look at how many people your God killed and smotes and everything else. And then, like I said, even in the end game, even when we get to the New Testament, supposedly we have free will, but there's a punishment if you use your free will and say, I do not believe. There's a punishment for that, so you can't say it's free. But the punishment is infinite. So we're getting punished infinitely for a finite crime. How is that justice? How is that moral? And do we have the ability to make those decisions without God? Yeah, I think we can.
Goals. And for all of these, logic and reason can tell us the best way to achieve those goals. Now, it would be easy to think of an example where you could fulfill your goal in the best or right way, and the goal could still be immoral.
Well, right. Goals can still be immoral regardless of how you achieve them. It doesn't matter. They can be moral regardless of how you achieve them.
That shows us that just because there is a way to best achieve our goal doesn't imply that the goal itself is right or wrong. And as my argument showed earlier, and as you even now seem to agree, we can't determine what is right on the basis of our desires either. So this is where it gets...
Well, we can determine what's right on the basis of our desires if we examine our desires. If we say, okay, am I desiring this because it's what I believe, or, it's based off of superstition, or am I desiring this because logically it makes more sense to do A, B, C, or D, and to do it in this way to get to this point? Am I looking at what I really need, or am I looking at what I believe that I need? Okay? I need to eat. I need to be warm. I need oxygen. I really need those things. But, I believe that I should do this because this God that I believe in says I should do this. There's a difference between, and there's other things, let's see, like me smoking, okay? That I smoke. I'm a chain smoker from hell. I know. Okay? But anyway, is it like, and I'm an atheist. Do I think it's immoral for me to smoke? In the sense that it's hurting me and killing me and, is bad for my health, in a sense you could say that it's immoral. But, immoral is more based off of the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. Not necessarily, it's hard to look at morality and say, well, it's like, in the same way that, well, it's good to not run out in traffic so you don't get hit, But there is a relationship between those two things. Because what we decide is good or positive is usually based on what our needs are or our desires are. And our desires are usually based on what is the best thing, the most positive outcome for what we desire. So in other words, if what we desire is usually what's best for us, and usually is a positive outcome, then that means our morals are usually, our goals are usually going to be to get to those things. And therefore that is what's moral. I don't know if that made any sense or not, but anyway, like I said, as an atheist, as far as my smoking, I guess you could kind of almost look at that as, I kind of almost think it's immoral because it's not a good thing to do. It's not a positive thing to do. It probably won't have a positive outcome. Now, I think that we have a natural propensity, as I've made the argument already, and that we are hardwired to do what's good. So why do I smoke? Because I have an addiction to the nicotine. Because I started smoking initially because I thought it was alleviating my stress or whatever. I have a behavioral dysfunction. I am broken. There's something wrong with me. I'm not acting in my best interest. Therefore, I'm acting almost not so much outside of nature, because nature allows for this. And nature allows for flukes and for abnormalities, for people to be psychotic, for there to be behavioral issues. Nature allows for that. So I'm still acting within nature, but I'm going against nature because I'm going against what's best for myself. And that's why people can and have the ability to act immoral, to go against their own instincts, because their instincts are skewed. They're broke. Their perspective is wrong.
Interesting. So you recognize that the goal of maximizing societal happiness is usually right. but it is also sometimes wrong, like in the analogy of the organ donor.
I don't know about that.
And you even go so far to recognize that what is right and what maximizes your selfish interest may be different. So you seem to recognize some facts about reality that your worldview, in this case naturalism, will ultimately be unable to account for.
No, because I've already made the point that it can be accounted for. So, I mean, unless you can say something to argue against the point I've been trying to make, as far as that morals are basically natural instincts, then...
Debating things like the objective morality of the Christian God is something that can be done, but it's not very productive to somebody who doesn't see any evidence of the existence of this God.
Okay, I would agree with that it's not very productive for somebody who doesn't believe in that. But obviously for Epi believes that because there's objective morality, that there must be a God. And he's going to go into proving that, or trying to prove that, but I have a problem with your first premise.
Moral argument is about the existence of God. It takes a look at things which you should already be able to recognize as true.
Okay, the moral argument doesn't have anything to do with a God, really. I mean, it does if you're trying to argue your point that, well, objective morality equals a God. You still haven't proven that or shown that in any way. That's the only way that the discussion of morality has anything to do with a God, is if you're trying to prove the point that God is attached to those things, or unattached to those things, I suppose. But like I said, you've still yet to do that.
And then shows that given that information, it must be true that God exists. Let's take a look.
Let's.
Premise 1 says, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist.
Okay, premise 1 says that? No, you're saying that. You're saying that if God does not exist, objective morals and values, or objective moral values and duties do not exist. How do you... Hang on, I got a cat here. How do you come up with that premise? What proves that premise? There's nothing... That's not a factual statement, because there's no proof of that statement. If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. That's like saying, something concrete that we know is fact in our world, you and I, that we're not just really... I'm not one of those atheists that thinks that science is like a type of God and can do no wrong or whatever. Science is basically all of us learning about our environment, and it evolves over time, and it makes mistakes and so on and so forth. But there's some things that I think even you would agree are true, like, I don't know, gravity, for instance. You, I'm assuming, would agree with me that if you take a step off a tall building, you're going to fall, right? You would agree with me probably that 2 + 2 = 4. Right? Those are kind of objective things. They're kind of objective, concrete facts, right? That really are not subjective. So what you're saying is that because objective morality exists, that God must naturally exist. I don't understand how that works. That's like saying that because 2 + 2 = 4, God must exist. Because when I walk off this building and I fall due to gravity, God must exist. Okay, because this pen is really here and it's really a pen, there must be a God. What kind of how is that a factual statement, and what, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I could say because this pen exists, fairies exist. Because this pen exists, unicorns exist. Because I know that it's a fact that this exists, leprechauns exist. How about that? That's about how much weight that first premise holds. Sorry.
Now, it is at least possible that God's nature could provide an objective standard of morality.
God's nature? Well, yeah, God's nature maybe could, as far as what we've concocted as who God is, has a lot to do with what we consider moral, as I've already said earlier. A lot of our laws and everything are based off of people who are Christian. And there's a lot of Christian values that a lot of Christians argue all the time, or bring up all the time, that are involved in, like, our Constitution and things of that nature. Although there is a serious thing about, freedom of religion. And I think that it's important to note that. And there were a lot of atheists also, as far as our forefathers go. We created the idea of gods. That, you can go back to Samaria. We started there. We had to have an explanation. We had to know why there was thunder, why there was lightning, why all these freaky things happened, why our crops didn't grow, yada, yada, yada. We had to have an answer because we're intelligent creatures. And it drove us nuts, and it still drives us nuts. We want to know where we came from, why we're here. So we created the idea of a God. And it is proven scientifically that we have a natural propensity to need that answer. And so actually being an atheist or not believing in God is almost going against natural instincts in a sense, or going against your own nature to some degree. But it's based on logic. The more logical you get, the less you base what you think is right and what you think is wrong on just what your beliefs are, and the more you base it on what is true and what is logical and what is testable and what there's evidence for, the better your answer is going to be, the better your solution for whatever problem is going to be, the better your goals are going to be. So anyway, let's continue.
And it seems pretty clear, given my arguments earlier, that naturalism cannot account for objective morality if it exists.
Yes, it can.
Premise 2 is objective moral values and duties exist.
You know, if your goal for morality, like if the end goal of your moral system is to enslave, torture people, do all those things that, you
Hitler,
know, for the sake of argument, let's agree are bad. Well, if they can't even grasp that simple thing, like their conception of morality is just, it's incorrect.
Yeah, it's not so much that it's incorrect, it's that they are broken. They are they're like malfunctioning robots. Where the rest of us are functioning, they're malfunctioning. And like I said, that's still natural. Abnormalities, flukes, you know, psychopaths, it's still a part of nature for whatever reason, but not the norm, you know, outside of the norm, or like I said, broken.
If you argue that there is not only a right way to achieve your goals, but there is also a correct perception of which goals are right, the morality is not subject to human opinion or preference.
I agree with that, except for the fact that I don't think it matters how you go about achieving your goals so much, because, I mean, unless how you're going to achieve, like say you were going to try to achieve something that we would all agree is moral, but you're doing it in a way that hurts people, well, then it just kind of deems the whole thing as immoral at that point. That's the only factor as far as how you go about to achieve your goals that I think really matters.
And objective morality exists. Now, if those two premises are true, then it is impossible for the conclusion to be false. Therefore, God exists.
Yeah, but as I've already pointed out or made the case for, the first premise is not true. God does not have to exist in order for objective moral values to exist. And you have yet to tell me how that works.
As always, test everything, hold on to the good.
Good advice.